The next speaker, I'm going to ask David Batstone to come to the stage. David is a new friend. I'm pretty certain that at some point, because we both go back all the way back to the kind of .com and the 90s where we were doing internet stuff. David's one of his first things that he did was create one of the most important internet publications called Business 2.0. It was a really important, and they talk about zeitgeist. What David did with Business 2.0 was capture and talk about that zeitgeist. He then started investing very successfully for, it seemed, about 2 decades, and has a lot of experience to share with us on that point. He's a philanthropist. He's got a good heart. He set up an organization called Not for Sale, which takes women and children out of slavery and other really horrific situations, and has created really a global campaign around that. And Touche is off the charts and impressive. It's really wonderful to follow those stories of how you're transforming these women's lives. It turned to impact investing through Just Business, and have done some incredible things there, and decided to focus on all of from the energy and the environmental, which I'm sure you'll share with us a little bit. Took on recently a CEO role. Mentioned that he wanted to potentially buy a home in the South Mediterranean. We got him to Kia, and he saw the potential here. So neighbor here in Kia. He's a wonderful person. He's an entrepreneur. He's an investor. I'm so pleased that you came to join us today at Keanaissance. David, would you please welcome David Batstone to the stage?
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. And if I had known that we were going to be using our high school yearbook photo, Scott, I would have brought a. I might have changed my photo as well. But I was reflecting earlier. Jack and I had a conversation about Silicon Valley, and it sparked in my mind a story that I hadn't thought about for a while. Business 2.0 was a magazine that was charting this new economy, and it was the beginning of internet commerce. And so these little startups called Yahoo and Amazon and eBay were all emerging at that time. And so we had the great pleasure of going to interview these founders and say, what is this economy about? How are you going to take advantage of it? And I remember having the opportunity to interview the founders of eBay, the whole PayPal mafia, about this new technology, this auction software, bringing buyers and sellers together and trying to figure out how to create, leverage the internet to generate revenue. So they described the software, and I said, okay, it's really interesting. Then I said, how are you going to make money? And then one of the founders quickly said, okay, what we're going to do. And he gave me this whole philosophy on his business model and how it's going to work. And I go, okay. So then I'm taking notes. There's a pause. And he goes, what do you think of that? I said, I don't know, it makes sense. But on the other hand, and I gave my alternative theory, and the other founder turned to him and said, see, I told you that wouldn't work. And then start arguing right in front of me, right? I'm like, oh my God, you guys are making this shit up, aren't you? It was that day I decided to become a venture capitalist. I would rather make this shit up than write about you making this shit up, right? So it really was a fun time in terms of, putting the wings on the airplane as you're flying it, right? And it really impresses me today. We are at that moment again around energy. We're reinventing everything, right? We're trying to find solutions, and whatever solution we come up with, Rose and I were having this conversation a little while ago, it's going to probably change within the next month. But you still move forward as you're thinking creatively about how you make that adaptation. Yeah? And that's really one of the most critical factors of the next 10 years around energy, is to figure out how do you create models that have the capacity to embrace and integrate integration around innovation. So how do we create those platforms, and how does capital get invested strategically in order to take advantage of those pivots? So for my short presentation, and I know you're all happy to hear that word short, I'm going to focus on three uh, examples of things I'm involved in. Um, Julie mentioned I have an investment company called Just Business, and we do very targeted early stage investments. And really, I came to the point in my life. I said, does the world really need, another version of, my phone? I think, probably I would rather spend my time to create profitable models that redesign the future that I believe in. And part of that is this beautiful environment. How do I contribute to redesigning the way that we engage that environment and how we move ourselves and how we power our lives? So decarbonizing transport has become a real passion of mine. That is, how do we move away from fossil fuels, but do it in a way that is transitional? And what I learned back in the days of the internet commerce was that people would put on the whiteboard in 1999, 1998, what the size of that economy would be in 2010. Right? So they designed these grand plans of getting to 2010 without going through the year 2000. And as we learned, that was a big mistake. So the same today, everyone will tell you what's going to happen in 2030, 2035 around transport. But what there's not available in any great plentitude are transitional technologies that will get us there. Right? So I'm going to start with batteries for the electric vehicle. Today, there are 140 gigafactories being built in Europe. 140 gigafactories. And the US is behind. I think there's 44 right now, but they're trying to catch up. And if you look at the business model and the capital investment model around those batteries, it's based on a very high volume, very high capex production of EV batteries for the coming wave of demand. The problem with that model is that it does not embed innovation in the model. It's built for a specific kind of battery, a specific shape, and a specific kind of set of materials to make that battery. But innovation is going to be coming. It comes every day, right? I met in Germany, in Berlin this last week, the head of technology of a major OEM. And he's redesigning a battery that doesn't use manganese, doesn't use lithium, doesn't use cobalt, but uses common earth minerals rather than scarce or critical earth minerals. And he said, my challenge is, how do I find a manufacturing that enables me to start to build that at a smaller level and then scale it? So I became CEO of Blackstone Technology. Blackstone, not Batstone. I tried to get them to change the name, but they liked the name they had. In order to have that kind of adaptability and flexibility, we 3D print batteries. And the way that we do that is through multi-layer, high-speed manufacturing. Very thin layers of the minerals that I mentioned, of the metals I mentioned, cobalt and lithium. Imagine a baklava, since we're here in Greece, right, with the layers of nuts and honey, and this is how we make a battery. And so my background was in, most recently, was I was the early board member and investor in a company called American Battery Technology Company. And we have a big facility we're building in Nevada. Our back door is Tesla's front door. And the reason that we want to be in such close proximity to Tesla is that when they're making batteries through this mass manufacturing procedure, using mostly Chinese technology that's taken to a mass manufacturing, they have 32% waste of the materials that go into the battery. And so our first factory plant is simply going to take all the waste from their manufacturing procedure, not even end-of-life batteries, right? It's just the waste. So imagine so many multiple layers, what's the problematics of that? One is that making a battery is very costly. In fact, an EV vehicle really is a battery and four wheels. But 55 to 60% of the cost of that car is the actual battery itself. Then we can think about, is there a resale value at some point for that car? That's another conversation, right? But imagine then the supply chain challenges of that. To be able to find all of the metals that are going to provide the not only the battery manufacturing, but the waste as well. So we began to look at how you can make a more efficient way to design a battery and implement it. And through our process of 3D printing, we have 1% waste, which is phenomenal, both on a financial and environmental level. Also, we can make a battery for a scooter, laptop, a ship, a bus, a car. So we can adapt it to make because we just have to recode the technology to manufacture the battery. Right? We can make it different sizes, different shapes, so adaptability. And then part of that process too is when there's this innovation, when the head of the technology of a major OEM comes to us, says, I have a new battery I want to design, we can start implementing it within a month rather than another $2 billion in investment and 5 years. So adaptability is very key for this. So we built our first manufacturing plant in Germany. We're in the north of Germany near Leipzig. And we have done it at a modular level. We can do 50 megawatts today. We're now in the process of building a 550 megawatt and then a 1.2 gigawatt. So we can keep scaling based on the demand. Again, flexibility in the manufacturing of batteries. But the other problem of this, of course, is the amount of materials needed to be able to make a battery. If there's 140 gigafactories in Europe, another 44 in the United States, where are all these minerals going to be coming from? We're going to be digging up your backyard and mine because there's not enough places in the earth where we have these minerals. It's an environmental and financial and supply chain nightmare. Of course, supply chain nightmares seem to be kind of the answer to everything these days, you know, supply chain challenges. Why aren't you married, David? That's a supply chain challenge. So, thought about this the other day. That's it. Thank you. You'll use that one. You can use it. Okay. So, began to look at that as a supply chain challenge. My business partner, Ted Swindells, is here in the back. And we started to look at the opportunities in, mining the waste. What we call waste today, there's no such thing as waste anymore. It's just stranded assets. Right? And so if you look at the making of all these batteries that have been going on now for decades, lead acid batteries or now lithium ion batteries, instead of mining your backyard and mine, what if we start mining the things we've already used and reduce our reliance on new virgin extraction? It's not going to end virgin extraction, but how do we start diversifying our sourcing? So I became involved in American Battery. We took over a defunct mining company in Canada and turned it into a green technology company. Took it public, brought it to $1 billion market cap. We hadn't even recycled a battery yet. We don't even have any revenue. So Scott, sorry for this extrapolation on your talk. It became a $1 billion market cap company, but I became clearly aware that the challenge for that was that there was going to be an end-of-life battery that was 4 or 5 years away. There's not enough end-of-life batteries today. And so where are we going to get all the feedstock? I'll let them figure that out because I left that company to look at a more strategic company. And for me, that was Regenerate, that Ted and I started, was to look at first lead acid batteries. How do we extract more value from that lead acid battery? How do we increase the value of the lead oxide? How do we put it back into the battery manufacturing? And also, how do we stop the environmental disaster that the recycling of lead acid batteries represent? So we were able to make a partnership acquisition of a fantastic technology out of Cambridge University in UK that had designed the new technology that would enable us to create more lead oxide value, less environmental impact negativity. And so we saw the opportunity not only to then kind of build our own demonstration plant, to start consolidating around Europe first and then the United States, these old recycling facilities that we're still stuck in the 1940s or 60s, bring them into 2022. And so we acquired 2 facilities in the UK as well as in Spain. We're in negotiation for Sweden and Finland, and we're looking perhaps other places like Greece. So how do we then, you have the technology, you have the innovation, and now you're looking for places where you can implement that. But the other thing, I keep coming back to the 140 number. This is like practical transitional technologies. If there's 140 gigafactories all needing these materials, and there's a scarcity of them, they're going to need a lot of help with their supply chain. One thing they're going to need is, where do we store these materials? Oh, we have permitted recycling facilities. So the permit, huge, yeah? To be able to have ownership and have JVs in place with a whole range of network of recycling facilities are really important, both for the storage, the transit, and then the processing of those batteries, so that they can go straight back into the manufacturing. So really, if you're looking for good investments or good entrepreneurial innovations, look at supply chain of batteries, because it's a mess. It has no capacity today to meet the demand that's going to be coming in 3 years, let alone in 20 years. Right? So this is a great time to be involved in supply chain logistics for batteries. Now I'm going to shift a little bit to hydrogen, because I said, there's not one bullet here that solves all the problems of decarbonization of transport, right? Moving us away from our dependency on fossil fuel. And also, oil is not going away, right? Huge sunk investments in the infrastructure of oil. It's not going away. So how do we come up with a transitional, pragmatic strategy for that evolution? Again, on the whiteboard, you can show me what it's going to look like, but how do I get from here to there? So how do we come up with that kind of solution that works for a lot of parties in the game? I began to look at the possibility of going to a fleet of trucks or buses and suggest to them that I had a solution for their decarbonization or mobility, and all they had to do was get rid of all 200 trucks in their fleet. Right? Not a very compelling argument, right? So I was able to make a major investment and join the board of a company out of Canada called Hydra Energy. Hydra Energy is a technology that can convert any internal combustion engine to be biofuel, half hydrogen, half diesel. Right? We talk about cutting carbon emissions and the contribution that trucking and buses and industrial equipment make to the greenhouse effect. Tomorrow we could cut 40% to 50% by just simply converting the process of how they use fuel. You can keep your existing inventory. Right? You can keep your existing inventory. We will make that transition so that then now you are able to use hydrogen but not have this range anxiety. Where's the next hydrogen pumping station, because there's no infrastructure. Right? The same with buying an electric car. I'm sure many of you did not buy an electric car yet because you don't want that range anxiety. Imagine telling a trucking company or a bus company or that, don't worry, it will come. Just go ahead and, right? So the future is going to be hydrogen fuel cells, but also conversion of existing internal combustion engines. Ironically or coincidentally, Ted's the lead investor in Hyzon, the parent company that then spun off Hyzon, that is hydrogen fuel cell trucks. More hydrogen fuel cell trucks on the road than anyone else. I'm the lead investor in Hydra Energy, the leading biofuel conversion company. So together we have more commercial trucks on the road anywhere in the world. Right? So driving that demand that's practical. And what I see probably is, a blended solution. Most of these solutions are going to be blended, that you go to a municipality that has a whole 100 garbage trucks and you say, we'd like to work with you on decarbonizing your transport. Do you want to maybe replace some of your existing vehicles with a brand new Hyzon truck? And do you want to convert the other 90 until which time you have written off the depreciation, right? And then you can decide whether you buy a new high zone truck. Creating solutions. This is about solutions, not about products. You put yourself into the mind of the client, not in terms of what I have. And that's the biggest problem I find with many startups is we want to be the hero. No, we want them to be the hero. We just want to give them the tools for them to be the hero. Let them be the ones who say we are the leading decarbonized. We're using less carbon emissions than any other fleet of trucks on the road. Create those solutions for them, not for us. So looking at this in context, I find that a lot of the existing capital markets are looking for pragmatic solutions that today can create revenue and will move us towards the goal of where we're going to reach. Coming up with an idea that in 10 years we'll have revenue, we're going to create, all we need is infrastructure. Those are very difficult sells. Right? So there are solutions emerging. Invest in things that are transitional, that can prove themselves towards where they're headed, and do not depend on all the infrastructure to be in place in order to be successful. And I think you'll find a lot of investors and entrepreneurs who want to join into that. I'd love to have a conversation with you. I'm bored with myself. I'm sure you're joining me in that. And love to, any questions you have or comments, I'd love to hear.
I have just one. I couldn't help but, when you were talking there, thinking about the semiconductor industry in the early 90s, and particularly the risk. I was working on the Motorola car PC, and we got completely outmarketed by Intel and Pentium because it was never about the chip level performance. It was always about system level.
Yes.
And so you have incredible, and I'm wondering to what extent, you look for any kind of signal about what to do in batteries, as you really well described it, by what happened with, the big companies like Chartered and so forth, and where the manufacturing of semiconductors ended up and how crucial it was towards driving the system level performance of everything, every kind of device that we use, right? And is there anything to be gained from it? Are batteries the new chips?
Oh, I 100% agree with that analysis, actually. It's funny you say that. We internally at Blackstone, we talk about the fact we want to be the semiconductor solution.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And there's so many layers to that, is that instead of seeing, you see your place in the integration of that process going forward, and also the localization of that production. So right now, most of the gigafactories are being built around the OEM industry, say Germany, America, Detroit. But, Australia needs batteries. Colombia needs batteries. Right? So to be able to provide regional modular production of batteries for everything from a scooter to a laptop to a bus, it's going to be enormous, right? So one thing is one is the chip, two, it's the diversification or the regionalization of production.
So do you see anything like, we're really going back there now, but, the Wintel, or, because so many people will think about Apple's dominance now because they came up with the model, the ecosystem economics model. But if you go back to when we were trying to establish PowerPC, it totally failed.
Yeah.
Because of the Wintel dominance. So how do you think of those standards driving what's happening, or is it just completely different landscape?
Well, I think I was reflecting on your question to Scott earlier about do we do startups that try and organically grow, or do we be the handmaidens of the corporate established institutions? And I say yes, right. I think part of that is to build those infrastructures and technologies, and then I think the exit or the partnerships come with some of the established players, because you're not going to overcome that. Today we have such a monopolization and consolidation of capital and marketing and messaging to think that, I'd love to be the iTunes that disrupts the whole, music industry, right? But I think it's probably a fool's journey.
Right.
So we need to figure out how to both dance with them, but also not let them stamp on your feet.
Okay, and just maybe not everybody understands with Blackstone, how much of what you do is software driven, and how much of it is hardware? Or is that the wrong way to look at it, software, hardware?
No, we're in each of these cases. Say Hydra Energy, our IP is the software intelligence behind the engine. We don't change the engine. We change the way that fuel is injected in the engine.
Right.
And so then it tells the engine, the driver doesn't have to do anything. It just says, now you use hydrogen because of torque. Now you use it because of temperature. Now you use diesel. So it's the brains behind it. Blackstone technology. It's the brains behind the production of a battery so that it can quickly make it at different types of. The hardware is immaterial. It's what you need, and we can design it for that and produce it for that.
Questions out there for David? Yes, please. You got Philip.
Yes, one question about the battery topic. You crossed it shortly in regards to sustainability and the recycling of the batteries, because one big point of critics is always, what are we doing with the batteries when they reach their end? And I understand you have a possibility to reuse part of it, and I would like to understand a little bit more about the ratio, what potential you see in this field to avoid just the next big
Right.
trouble.
No, thank you for that. This is why I think that we cannot overemphasize that full circularity. And our goal is zero waste. I mean, zero waste. Every part of the existing battery is reused in the next battery. And we're at that place with our technology now. We wouldn't have been there 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years ago, you know where all the Tesla batteries were going? Some underground storage unit in Indonesia. Right? There was 4% recycling of batteries as little as 7 years ago. So today, zero waste. And there are a number of companies. I wish I could say we're the only one. If you want to believe that, talk to me afterwards. I'm happy to. But we're at that front edge of using zero waste to be able to put everything back into it. Now, well, the wonderful thing I love about the Regenerate is that not only we bring it back, we're increasing the value to the anode for our when we recycle it, we increase its lead oxide value. So now you're not just giving them, okay, it's an inferior return value. It's a higher return value because of the way that you process the old battery, because of the innovation in technology. Imagine, right? So the same with lithium ion. You can extract the cobalt. They're infinitely recyclable, all those minerals. They're infinitely recyclable. And unfortunately, that's why it's a stranded asset. We've been throwing that away. So not only an environmental disaster, it's a financial disaster. And so when you start thinking that way, wow, it really pays to be an environmentalist these days, you know? Elon Musk. No. That's like the supply chain answer. Elon Musk. That's the reason I'm not married. Elon Musk. Okay, no. You know, I'm really fascinated. I've been involved in.
You're a better communicator than he's a soundbiter, but you're a better communicator. No, but there's a communications educational angle to each of these. Why isn't there more information in the market? But you're.
I think and the bigger players are not sure what to do with innovation, and so that's why they're not. Like, I can talk to them about recycling technology. I can talk to them about a better way of making a battery 3D, but they have so much sunk infrastructure cost. They want to recapture that investment cost before they move on to something new. I remember as a journalist, it was 20 years ago, I interviewed the head of one of the largest utilities in Europe, and I said, imagine if we came up with this incredible solution. Let's take hydrogen. I never thought I would one day be working in hydrogen, but imagine a hydrogen molecule was able to be harnessed to create the energy and replace all the kind of existing energy systems. How would you handle that? And he said, I wouldn't do anything for 20 years. And so I think this is, and the reason being, because there's such investment, not just in commodities or in resource, but in all of the infrastructure that depends on a certain way of producing energy. And so this is so instead of saying, okay, I'm just going to, iTunes them, how do I come up with a way? Like the oil industry has become one of my best friends towards hydrogen because they see, wow, you can do biofuel. That means we have a longer life with our fuel now, right? Kind of cynical, but they need a transition plan. They need a transition plan too. And so we need to come up with solutions if we want to be successful. Everyone wins.
So What about the how do you look at balance sheets and financial statements different? What does transitional technologies and investment and mean to the way that you forecast, to the way that you're creating, enterprise value or network asset value? I love the stranded
Yeah.
asset. So how are you looking at what's the where's the place that you want to get to with your financial statements for Blackstone? How do you think of that differently when it's a transitional technology compared to something which is a destination technology?
I think you really it. I've been through startups for so long now that I'm a little bit jaded because I look at I ask an entrepreneur to give me a projection. And he goes, for how far out? I said 6 months because everything else is fantasy, right? I mean, I can write fiction too, right? But 6 months, you can tell me, okay, what's your existing product demand? What's your pipeline look like? Who are going to be your early partners? And how are you going to transition that to revenue? So in 6 months, then I want your next 6 month plan. Now, okay, I like to have them start brainstorming about 3 years and 10 years, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to the 6 month plan, if that makes sense. You mean the U.S.? No, they stole the name from us. So no, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Sorry. Actually, okay, no, not at all. It comes out of actually a company in Switzerland called Blackstone Resources, and they're a mining resources and trading company. Now, it's kind of a you know the challenge, frankly, just speaking among friends, and the camera hopefully doesn't catch this, is that now we spun off a very innovative technology where you're tied to your parent company, which is a public company in Switzerland, whereas the value of the new technology is way beyond what the value of the existing trading company, because that's not a very exciting, right? Cloud-based software and 3D technology is exciting. Trading commodities is not a very high multiple. So it's called a value trap, right? So how do you create that value in that new technology? So, but we become Blackstone Technology. We spun it off. We're a 100% private company now, and But Al, Blackstone Technology is kind of known as Blackstone, so people think, oh, I'm waiting for a call from New York at some point.
Later on, I'm going to introduce you some of the future idea for Kia, for Mykonos, for many other Cyclades island about eco-marina. And I would like to know the transition period. How do you picture this future in terms of years between the transition fuel, diesel, and electric and hydrogen?
Yes. Well, okay. So I call myself a pragmatic idealist. Maybe it's like the Scottish guy, half glass empty and fully empty, but a pragmatic idealist in that my ideal is the regional production of energy that doesn't require unconsolidated centers, but that can create value locally for local platforms and economy. An island's perfect for that, to demonstrate that and prove that. I mentioned that we can convert any internal combustion engine to hydrogen. So now we're beginning to work with mining, agriculture. Imagine all the diesel. We just made a partnership with the Edmonton International Airport, the first international airport in the world to go hydrogen. And they have machines like, I don't know if you know when a plane lands, if there's a bunch of earthworms on that, it's like black ice and it just skids off the runway. So every night they have these sweepers that go and clean the runway. That machine, just one of them, uses 800 liters of petrol every day. They have 3 of them. So we're transitioning that. Immediately, they're reducing their carbon waste from that, carbon emissions by 50%. So imagine you think of every diesel engine on this island, internal combustion engine, whether it's a generator, whether it's a vehicle, or whether it's a piece of machinery, equipment. Imagine you could produce locally all the hydrogen you needed, but you also had an offtake for it. I think whoever thinks creatively in terms of municipality or island or eco-marine can come up with running a ship, running a tractor, running a generator, all using hydrogen we produce locally, and we're not waiting for Chevron or Exxon to bring in our oil. Yeah. This is the future. How many years? Tomorrow morning, I can change all of your engines.
Very good. Any other questions for David? I'm sure there's one or two more there.
Thank you for helping me with my supply chain issues. I really appreciate it.
David, outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Thank you so much. Thank you.